What's up again, guys? Brian here with 3TR, and I got a quick little topics video for you. Now, this video was requested to me by one of my newer subscribers by the name of Mark Main, and he wanted to basically do an update video from my Resident Evil 7 Thoughts and Ideas Part 1 video. So this being Part 2, I decided to just kind of go over a couple of still standing ideas that I think they should do for the next installment of Resident Evil, and just a couple of other main things that I think they should either add or revamp or take out in general. Number one on my list being add a girl team. Now, I stated this in my previous video, and I think it'd be a really great idea if they want to continue this whole co-op storyline type of gameplay, that why don't we play as two girls? Throughout the entire history of Resident Evil, it seems to be tradition that you always have to have a guy and a girl team up, or two guys. Well, why not have two girls? I think at this point in time, all the girls that have survived in this Resident Evil franchise are more than capable of handling their own, and they're not just there to be damsels in distresses. I don't think any of them are damsel in distresses. They can kick just as much ass as any of the guys. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you were to tell me who would win in a fight between Jill and Chris, I really don't know. It'd be pretty close, and especially between Ada and Leon. So, you can't tell me that, these girls can't, hold a game on their own shoulders. I think they're more than interesting enough characters. I think that adding two girls kind of would bring something new to the franchise. And the two girls that I originally thought I would want for them to team up would be Shefa and Jill, because they're both part of the BSAA. But now that I think about it, I think it'd be nice to get Claire back into the game, to the main lining, and have her maybe team up with Jill. It's quite amazing that as many years as Chris and Jill have been working together, that she's never met Claire. So I think it would lead up to some pretty funny conversations or interactions where maybe they're talking about Chris, like, I don't know, maybe they'll note that, have you noticed how Chris has gotten so big in the last 10 years? I mean, I remember back in the mansion, he was kind of all scrawny, and now he's like a bodybuilder. So I think adding things like that would be a great addition to the Resident Evil franchise, and something I'd like to see in the next installment. The next thing I'd like to add is how they handle single player and co-op with the storytelling. Now, this is an idea that another franchise, which I believe is doing a much better job with the survival action horror genre than Resident Evil is, and that's Dead Space. I think giving us the ability to choose whether we play by ourselves or a friend and have the story adaptable would add an entirely new level of experience. For those of us who would like a much more survival horror feeling, kind of like, hopelessness, we could pick single player, and maybe the second player, whoever we're playing with, makes occasional appearances, never actually involves themselves in what we're doing. And if we decide to play with another friend, then they simply add new scenes, change the script, add new cutscenes, or play a certain part of the game differently, which requires co-op. So I think having the option of choice is a great idea than having us have to play with an AI character or having us to play with somebody online. Because maybe I just want to play by myself. Just like I did in Resident Evil 4. I didn't have to play with a co-op character in that one. The next point I'd like to point out is take out all the shooting enemies. And what I mean by that is take out any enemies that have any types of firearms. Now, I was perfectly acceptable with this in Resident Evil 4 because it had never been done before, and it was quite effective. And to be honest, those weren't zombies. Let's be honest with it. That was Las Plagas, and Las Plagas are a lot more intelligent than zombies. But what they did in this new installment with Resident Evil 6, I thought was a bit too much and pushed it way too far into the action genre. Now, that only really applies to Chris' storyline. I do believe that Leon's unquestionably was the best campaign in Resident Evil 6, and that is exactly the type of Resident Evil game we need. I would have liked it if the whole game had just focused on Lynn. I didn't even really care about what happened with Jake, Sherry, and Chris and Piers. Really didn't care about their storylines. So take out the shooting enemies. Zombies shouldn't be shooting. If I have someone shooting back at me and I have to use cover, then it stops being a survival horror game and ends up being a third-person shooter game. And you know, as much as I like action games, I think that Resident Evil should go back to its roots and bring out the horror aspect. The next thing I think they should go over is following Jake Mueller's storyline of him wanting to know more about his past with Wesker. Now, in 6, he finds out that Albert Wesker is his father, so I think the idea of him maybe going back and maybe understanding a bit more about his father may help him understand things about himself, because, you know, as a character, he has a lot of qualities that Wesker has. I mean, he does have that cocky-ass attitude. He does tend to like more with up-close combat than using weapons. So there definitely are some similarities. So I think seeing him want to discover that part of himself would be a great story arc, and you know, would definitely allow him to be solidified as a legitimate character for the Resident Evil franchise for the next generation of games. And finally, the thing I absolutely think they should have done in 6, but for some reason they didn't, is give us closure with the original characters. There was a really good scene that they had in 6, where Chris is talking to Piers, and he says, you know, after this mission, I would feel honored if you would take my place as leader. That, to me, was maybe a hint that they were going to retire Chris and let Piers take his place in terms of the BSA head guy. And that would have been perfect. I think every character who had, like, a newbie with them should have done that. I mean, we've had Leon. Don't get me wrong. Leon and Chris will always be the poster boys of the Resident Evil franchise. But I think it's time we pass the torch to the next generation and let them handle the new threat. Because you guys are much more for zombies. This next generation is going to be more for BOWs. And with BOWs, the sky's the limit to what, you know, Capcom, in terms of, you know, creature, virus, mutations, what they could come up with. And I think it's just on a much more personal note that, you know, we've seen the beginning of a lot of these characters, and so to actually see them walk away and not have to keep fighting. I mean, I'm sure people like Claire and Chris and Leon and Ada and Jill, I think they're tired of saving the world so many times. I mean, it gets to the point where you're so committed to this job that you don't have a life of your own. So to see them walk away and have a life outside of constantly having to, you know, respond to threat after threat after threat after threat would be a great way to cap off, saying, okay, now we can look towards the future. We don't have to look towards the past. And those are just the 5 main points of Resident Evil 7 that I think should be added in the next installment. So now I'd like to ask you guys, what would you guys like to see in the next Resident Evil installment? What would you like to see them add? What would you like to see them take out from previous installments? Most noticeably, you know, Resident Evils 5 and 6. And tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you guys have good enough responses, maybe I'll do a part 3 and comment on your guys' ideas. Or maybe you've got some great ideas that I didn't think of. I'd really like to hear. If you like this video, please like, comment down below, and please subscribe to check for me in my future video topics videos. And like always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.